oh, the poor girl who has a husband. That's what it's going to become. And you don't have to deal with that weight. That's what I get to carry every day. Those are the things I'm trying to figure out right now. And if I can't, then I don't belong here.
James has been unsure about this move since the very beginning, but now the stress of their financial situation is really starting to get to him. But if he were to go back to the States, what would that mean for his marriage?
I live in state almost 3 years and then James not even make it here for 3 months. It's not fair. I'm not going back.
Yeah, that was very definitive. Tata isn't backing down. But before we get to that, let's rewind to the start. So the last we saw the pair, they were having Tata's favourite snacks at the market and talking, as they so often do, about finances and kids. Now, Tata warned him, right? She said she couldn't make any promises, that if her husband were to move back to the States, that she'd go with him. But when we join them in this episode, it seems like life in Indonesia has become even more difficult for James.
Tata's parents cannot be the easiest to live with. I love them very much, but they can be very intrusive or controlling.
Living with your in-laws isn't exactly great for your love life, James tells us. But there's nothing that they can do about it. Like, even if they wanted to move out, they don't have the cash to do so. So surely the plus side of that is how cheap it must be to live there. Like, this arrangement is helping them to save money, and that is the most important thing right now, isn't it?
In about 2 weeks, we are having our second marriage here in Indonesia. All of this is really just feeling like a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and just a little bit too much.
Wait, what? They're planning a wedding? Correct me if I'm wrong, but if they don't have much money and they don't have any income, is now really the best time to be splashing out on a wedding celebration, especially considering they are already married? Well, Tata explains that she and James got married in the States during COVID. None of her family could attend, and that left her parents devastated. She promised them that they would hold another celebration in Indonesia, and while I respect the fact that she intends to keep that promise, surely they should wait until they're in better financial footing before doing so, because by the sounds of things, this isn't gonna be cheap.
Today we are going to go try on our Javanese wedding attire. It's what royalty used to wear way back when for weddings and stuff.
Wow, it doesn't sound like they're cutting costs if they're wearing royal wedding attire. Now, it's safe to say that James isn't exactly crazy about his outfit, but there's also something else that's playing on his mind, that's in fact making him feel sour about it all. And that is the role that his in-laws are playing.
Your dad got really involved once we started this stuff.
He like to be really included.
He doesn't care about anything, though. He doesn't care about money or budget. He's just like, let's just do everything.
I think this is more of a cultural thing, right? I mean, Tata doesn't seem to mind at all that her dad wants to be super included in everything. But James, on the other hand, well, he's far less enthusiastic about that. To him, it feels a lot more like control rather than inclusion. Her dad wants to pull the strings and dictate what should or shouldn't be done. In fact, he expects them to go all out and have quite a big affair. It sounds like he's invited a lot of people. But with that in mind, the question then becomes, who's footing the bill for this? Is Tata's dad contributing?
We're paying for this wedding, so we're trying to keep the budget somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500. In Indonesia, $1,500 US, it's a lot.
Ah, okay, so I'm actually inclined to agree with James here. If they've set what they believe to be a healthy budget, but her dad wants them to add more and more and not contribute, well, that is unfair. But I am curious, especially when it comes to these two. Have they communicated this budget to her parents? As we well know, these two are the masters of not saying anything. Like, given how quickly we saw that her parents were willing to pay off their card debt debt, given the house that they live in. It strikes me as a bit odd that they haven't offered to pay for at least some of this wedding cost. I don't know, I have a sneaky suspicion that they're not aware of this budget. That might explain why Tata's dad is acting the way he is.
He wants to add more guests. He wants to add very expensive entertainment, more expensive venue. We don't have the funds for that. And it's definitely starting to cause some grating between me and Tata's dad.
James has enough tension already as it is with his relationship with Tata. He definitely doesn't need more on his plate with his in-laws getting involved too. If he's starting to have tension with her dad, that might just be the final nail in their coffin. But just to add to the complexity of this situation, Tata is finding it hard to empathise with James. You see, she can't understand why James is so focused on trying to find employment. She thinks James should be helping her parents more in their business, their banana chip business. If you help out more, she says to James, then my dad will like you more.
Helping your dad with banana chips isn't going to help us make money, isn't going to help us find a job. So
I think that's just an excuse.
I definitely understand James's frustration, right? Tata wants everything. She wants the lavish wedding to keep her parents happy. She wants them to stay in Indonesia despite not having any income. But rather than James getting a job, she wants him to work for her dad for free. That isn't a realistic way to survive. James has said all along that he wants to stand on his own 2 feet. He doesn't just want to mooch off her parents. But that gives rise to another issue that Tata has. Seeing as you're in Indonesia now, seeing as you're living with my parents, she says, you should be making more of an effort to be a better son-in-law. And one thing you promised my parents was you'd learn our language. Now, James retorts by saying, I am trying. But James's assertion appears to trigger Tata.
Try a little harder, like sometime without me there, to teach you, to translate for you all the time.
that is just not fair.
There we go again. Like clockwork, every episode, Tata has to have a meltdown. Her emotional regulation is 0. Now, does she have a point? Would it be very beneficial for James to learn the language, go out of his way to learn the language if they're going to live there? Yes, of course it would. But the anger she has, the resentment she seems to have towards him over this, basically telling him she resents the fact that she has to translate, doesn't seem fair. Once again, Tata has heard something she doesn't like and she's in tears. Now, it's left to the poor shop owner to have to walk in on their fight. This is probably worlds apart from the happy couples planning their weddings that he usually deals with. But as a closing remark, James says to Tata, "It's my responsibility to care for you. I'm the one that gets judged for what I do."
Oh, the poor girl who has a husband. That's what it's going to become. And you don't have to deal with that weight. That's what I get to carry every day. Those are the things I'm trying to figure out right now. And if I can't, then I don't belong here.
"If I can't provide for you," James says, "then I'm the one that will be judged and you'll be the one that gets pitied. People will look down at me and won't really think any worse of you," he says. "So that being the case, I can't justify working for your dad for free. I need to make my own money," he tells her. Now, whether or not that message has finally sunk in for Tata remains to be seen. I'm not convinced. But the next time we join them, they are at least trying to do something together to make some money. But it's not quite working.
Tata's in denial right now about our financial situation, and she's trying to look at it as it's all just going to work magically. That's not how it works.
Wouldn't it be great if wishful thinking could make all of our money issues disappear? Look, the problem is, despite them making the jewellery, they haven't actually been able to sell any yet. Their products aren't wanted by the local vendors because they make their own jewellery. And while they are selling them online, most inquiries are coming from the States. But the expensive shipping costs means that no one's buying them. So whilst discussing what it is they're gonna do, Tata drops a bombshell on James.
Been like applying a job, but most of them are just in the city, not here.
I didn't know you'd been applying for jobs.
Once again, we get to see firsthand just how exceptionally bad these two are at communication. She's been applying for jobs in Jakarta, 6 hours away, but this is the first he's hearing of it. Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia, is expensive to live in. It's too expensive to live in on just one salary, she tells us. And while I understand that learning of this must come as a shock to James, you'd have been forgiven for thinking that given how bad their money troubles are, he'd at least be happy that Tata is taking initiative. She's trying to help their situation. But James isn't happy.
Here, like if you were the one working and I wasn't working, society itself would eviscerate me daily. They would look at me as like a failure as a husband. I mean...
Now, interestingly, Tata doesn't disagree with James here. In fact, when he says it would cause your family to resent me, she actually says, yeah.
Yeah.
But what's the alternative, James? If you can't get a job, does that mean that you don't want her to either? One of you at least has to work, surely. Well, it turns out that James has been giving this some thought. He's seemingly become resigned to the fact that this experiment, trying life in Indonesia, just hasn't worked out.
We've reached the point where we're at the red line of we need to look into going back.
As expected, as we all knew would be the case, Tata isn't happy. She says she doesn't want to move. She's missed her family and she doesn't want to leave them again. Plus, she says, have you forgotten why we came here in the first place, James? My health, remember?
Yeah, because I was so sick. The doctor don't even know what happened to me. And then now it's like helping here.
There are good doctors out there, we just haven't found them.
If you recall, Tata had a thyroid problem that no one in the States could correctly identify apparently. Now, since coming to Indonesia, not only has it been identified, but she's told us she's taking treatment for it. She's told us she's feeling much better. So if that's the case, just playing devil's advocate here, but if that's really the case, why can't she just keep taking the same medication back in the States? This just feels like she's clutching at straws a little bit. She's desperately trying to come up with any reason why they can't go back. And the next one on her list is James's work schedule.
And you were mostly working. It's like when you're working, well, I do just stay at home. Maybe you go back, I stay here.
He works in the States and she wants to leave. She wants to work in Indonesia and he wants to leave. These two can't communicate and they can't find any middle ground. For as many reasons as James wants to go back, Tata finds reasons that she wants to stay. The truth is, both are right. Ultimately, for as difficult as it might be to hear, both of them need to prioritise their own happiness. And as it stands, I don't think either of them will ever be happy living in the other's country. Now, for the time being at least, Tata's adamant response, digging her heels in and saying she won't be going back, seems to frighten James, not for the first time, into backing down. For now. But the lines have been drawn. Tata will never be moving back to the States, and it sounds like she'll be sticking to that decision even if it costs her her marriage.
I live in state almost 3 years and then James not even make it here for 3 months. It's not fair and I'm not going back.